I'm Beck and welcome to an exciting book haul. I haven't filmed a book haul since I realized January this year, so this is well and truly overdue, but I tend to borrow a lot of books from my local library, so if you want to see updates on that, I usually do library hauls at certain points during the year as well. A lot of those library hauls also tend to pop into my weekly reading update, so I'll link that playlist down below if you're interested. Please like and subscribe, but let's get into the books. I actually can't remember if I've properly hauled this. I've definitely talked about it though, and that is Can't Spell Treason Without T. And this is a cozy fantasy where there are characters that have a romance, and then there are kind of low stakes as they try and amp up their cozy lifestyle. They open a cafe together. Raina and Kianth are the two leads, and Raina runs away from the queen. She's a Queensguard, well now ex-Queensguard, and Kianth is a powerful sorceress, and they've both been courting for 2 years, and they finally decide to take the plunge and run away together. It's not like the best cozy fantasy I've read, but it was still really enjoyable. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. And the sequel to this, actually, A Pirate's Life for Tea, has recently come out, and I'm on the fence. Like, I really want to go out and purchase it, but I also don't want to keep spending money. Like, the publisher sent this to me, which is absolutely amazing of them, but because this was only a 3.5 rather than a 4 or 5 stars, I'm hesitant about going out and purchasing the sequel. I might just do it anyway because cozy fantasy is a nice time. I guess while we're on it, actually, I should talk about my other cozy fantasy read of this book haul, and that is The Spell Shop. And this one has been doing the rounds quite consistently because people have been saying it's so worth the hype, and I actually agree with them. Usually when I read a very hyped up book, either by BookTube or TikTok, I look at it and I go, I hate this actually, but this one I had so much fun with. I loved it so much. And this one follows Kiela. She's got a best friend that is a sentient houseplant named Kaz. He had a spell put on him quite a long time ago, and Kiela takes Kaz and they flee the city because there's a current rebellion against the crown, and Kiela's kind of seen this coming, and so she's started to prepare for it. She's put away crates and crates of books because she is a librarian, and she's gone back to her home island that her parents raised her on until she was about 8 years old, and after that point her parents brought her to the city and raised her there, but now her parents, they've passed away. She's become a librarian, has been so for a long time, and the city is being sacked, so she's like, I need to leave. So she goes back to this home island, and has to rekindle relationships there. She has been almost like a recluse, a librarian recluse, for so long that she's almost forgotten how to talk to people and make those connections. And I just loved her beginning to farm, seeing her dabble in magic and rekindle relationships with the people around her. There is a really sweet subplot romance about the guy who lives nearby, and he helps her out a lot, and it's just really sweet, and it had great tension points. So at some points in this story I was like, oh no, I'm terrified, because it would go really up and down. And so even for a cozy fantasy, it had great stakes and great tension, and I just loved the character journey that our main character went on. It was just such a great time. A lot of these books I'm either going to read very, very shortly, or I've already read, and I only tend to buy books now that I feel like I'm going to love. So as I was listening to this one on a library hold as an audiobook, I was like, I know that I am going to give this 5 stars, so I went out and purchased a physical copy. And then I should talk about Samantha Shannon, because she has had a whole revamp facelift of all of her books in time, I think, for the 5th book to come out in her series in 2025, early 2025. So I went out and purchased the new edition. So that is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, which is the first in her series about clairvoyance and a corrupt government. So we follow Paige. She's 19 years old. She's a clairvoyant. Clairvoyancy, though, is illegal in the town of, or in the city of, Scion, London. So when Paige is out one night, she gets arrested by the night police just simply for existing because they sense her aura, and they cart her off to the hidden city of Oxford, and Paige has to survive here. It's basically like a camp, and this camp acts as a beacon for these otherworldly creatures, and Paige, the other humans, and also these creatures called the Rephium, who are otherworldly creatures but are fighting against the Buzzers. These Rephium run the camps, and they are training up the clairvoyants, but Paige is like, I need to train myself up and get the heck out of Dodge because this is not a place that I am going to thrive and survive. So she tries to form an alliance with her stoic handler named Warden, who is a Rephium, and, incite a rebellion in this city of Oxford. And it obviously goes into a lot more depth and detail and character pathways than that, because it's a very detailed, in-depth series. So I got the rest of the books so far that are out. I've already read them, but I'm really enjoying the revised editions. I've actually got a spoiler-free review of The Bone Season, and if I've got any other spoiler-free reviews or relevant what I'm reading videos, I'll link them in the description so you can jump to a specific synopsis or my specific thoughts in more detail, but those will be linked below, and I'll show you the rest of the Bone Season books that I've got. And they are The Mime Order and The Song Rising. A side note here is that The Bone Season and The Mime Time Order both have red covers, but now The Song Rising has a purple cover. And then the next book has a different spine, has a different spine altogether. And The Mask Falling has like a teal green spine. So I'm like, how am I going to match these up together on my bookshelf? They're going to be mismatched colors. It stresses me out. You'll notice a trend in this book haul that a lot of books that I've bought are by authors that I've either read from before or that have been like 5-star reads, like The Spell Shop, for example. But there was a release in July this year, and it was the final book in a series that I am absolutely obsessed with, and that is Wolf Song. So Brother Song came out in July, and I don't know if I still have the picture, but I was an absolute mess upon finishing this, and it would be hilarious if I could insert the picture of my suffering. But this is about a found family of werewolves. It's a very queer-friendly and queer-positive book. There are male-male romances centered in each of the books in this series, and so I just loved seeing the development of these relationships. These characters felt so real to me that I was crying in my friends' DMs. Like, I feel so much of their pain and their emotions. It's just such a good series and I can't recover from it. So it is well worth trying this series. I would highly recommend Wolf Song. At some point, I'm going to reread them all again. I've reread the first couple already because I wanted to do that in anticipation for Heart Song, which came out in February, and then this one, which obviously just recently came out in July. So, it was such a good series. I love it so much, and more people need to read it. Speaking of authors that I've also read from before though, I have another book to haul, and that is Casey McQuiston's new release, and that is The Pairing. And this is about two characters who were in a relationship, were best friends growing up, and then had a falling out, and therefore they haven't talked to each other for 4 years. But while they were together, they booked this trip across Europe, and this trip was a food and wine tasting tour, and both of them have a vested interest in food and wine in terms of their profession. So after they've broken up, they've gone, I need to put this ticket off for as long as possible, like I don't want to go on this tour. And then they finally get to the point that they can't put it off anymore. So each of them respectively rocks up on the tour and they run into each other on the tour bus and realize they've had the same idea. So it's about them rekindling their relationship. And I loved the descriptions of Europe. I've only recently just come back from my honeymoon, so it was amazing to revisit all of the locations and the tastes and just the atmosphere of that vibe visiting different countries. It was awesome. I enjoyed the side characters. I enjoyed the banter. This was a very highly focused book in terms of sexuality, and there was a bet between the two main characters of who could sleep with the most people on the tour bus or sleep with the tour guide. So it was a bit tongue-in-cheek that way, and I like how their contest was very surface level and it opened the gateway for a lot of different discussion of their feelings. That said though, I would recommend this, but I also would say read Red, White and Royal Blue, because that is going to be still my favorite book by Casey McQuiston. This was still good, but it just did not live up to my hype and expectations for it. So I would eventually want to reread it now that I know what to understand and expect, but at the same time, Red, White and Royal Blue, that has a special place in my heart. The Will of the Many is a book that a lot of people have been talking about this year, and I thought, you know what? I'm also gonna try it because, again, like I said, sometimes hyped books just do not do it for me. But when there is an outlier, oh boy, there is an outlier. I have a separate spoiler-free review of this book because I loved it so much that I wanted a specific recommendation video for other people to realize just how good this book is. And I think I've recommended it to 4 or 5 different people since, and all of them have gone on to really enjoy it. That says all you need to know. Go out and get this book. Despite the hype is well-founded. This is a book that follows VIDS, and he is trying to blend in and save enough money up in the world of the hierarchy. And the hierarchy is this almost Roman-inspired society that means you need to cede your will to this society to give them power. So it's about the individual giving over their life force to feed this pyramid effectively. And it's like a real-life pyramid scheme for these characters. So they're giving over their life force, and the higher up in the hierarchy you go, the more power people are imbuing to you, and therefore the more physically strong and capable you are. So Viz is like, I don't want any of this, because his people have been completely destroyed and he is the only escapee. And so he's trying to blend in, go to underground fighting rinks and win and save up money, and therefore leave the society when he has enough money to skedaddle. But obviously that doesn't happen. He gets caught up in a political scheme and he gets sent off to this effectively like a magical school, an academy. And while he's there, he needs to unearth this conspiracy linked to a death. And I just love how this somehow absorbed all of my favorite kind of tropes, like magical school, for example, but it also did it in a way that felt gritty and unique, and the magic system was so different to what I've read before. And Viz was just not a stupid character. He thought about things. You can tell that his trauma has aged him so much because he really thinks things through. This is not a game to him. He has to blend in. And I just, oh my God, I loved it so much. It was so twisty and turny. It surprised me at every corner and I just love it. So people who are on the fence about this should go out and buy it. Just don't even get the ebook. Don't even borrow it from your local library. Just go out and purchase it because you will not be sorry you have. I've got two more lighthearted books to talk about now, and one of those is The Wedding Forecast by Nina Kenwood. And this was a almost ruminating surprise. I didn't expect it to happen, and I enjoyed this author. I've read from her before. She usually writes romantic comedies, but she's written almost like new adult and young adult comedies before, and this is her first like adult comedy. And it's about a 30-year-old named Anna, and she's just recently got out of a long-term relationship with her partner Joel. And she's like, I'm 30, I'm questioning my career, and my best friend is getting married to the partner of her dreams. She's just bought a house. So she's like, I'm not at the point that I wanted to be in my life. And it follows her journey of like trying to get her feet back under her again, except it's told in such a sardonic, funny way that you understand the balance between her deep feelings and anxiety and also her humor. And it's such a fine line to walk that I found I really ended up respecting this book, even though it had some tropes in here that I absolutely hated, like surprise pregnancy, which is for a side character that Anna encountered. I love this book. It was so much fun, but it also felt serious at different points as well. And I just loved that there was no rekindling of romance with Joel, the guy that she broke up with. Like that's done. That's completed. There's another guy named Mac, and he's an international friend. So he's Australian like the other characters in this book, but he's come back to Australia for Anna's best friend's wedding. And therefore he's connected with Anna because they're both in the bridal party, but he goes back to LA to continue his acting career. And so Anna's like, this can't go anywhere because long distance is not going to work. So I love how this just came together with different relationships and different conversations, and how the best friend Haley was not always sunshine and roses either. It had a realistic take on a best friendship. It wasn't all like rom-commy and shiny on the outside. It actually had a little bit of undertone and grit to it too. So I just really enjoyed and respected this book, and I think a lot of people probably wouldn't know necessarily who Nina Kenwood is because she is an Australian author that doesn't seem to be hyped up a lot. So I'm bringing the hype. Try her out. She's worth it. I had a great time. And then unusually for me, another like upbeat kind of book that I wanted to talk about was Not for the Faint of Heart by Lex Croucher. And this is a Robin Hood retelling, but it's kind of adjacent to Robin Hood because it's following Robin Hood's granddaughter. And even though she's in the Merry Men, she's not leading the Merry Men. And she gets caught up on this almost mission, this once-off mission to intimidate a character. And as a result of her intimidating that character and teaching her a lesson, she ends up accidentally, I guess, kidnapping Clem. And Clem is our protagonist, who is like, I need to live in the moment and I can't let fear rule me anymore. And so I just love how jovial and ridiculous she is. Whereas Mariel, the character who is part of the Merry Men, she's very serious. And I like how both of them get the best out of each other, you know, as the story progresses. Initially, you know, Mariel doesn't want a bar of Clem, and it's a female-female romance, and it's young adult as well. So it felt like it was quick enough to keep my attention. The writing was so evocative and hilarious, and at the same time, it also delved into the side characters, and it made me cry at a certain point in the book as well, which I wasn't expecting. So this had all the great twists and turns. It had enough time built into this story to gather around your characters and ensure that they felt almost realistic to the story and have that impact you wanted. So it was just great. I had a fun time. And I think if you're looking for a bit of a romp, a standalone as well, this is the perfect place to look because I don't really reach for YA, but this just struck that itch so well. Now, I did just say I don't really read much YA, and technically, this isn't YA, but it was gifted to me and it's new adult, I think. And this is Powerless. Powerless is a flop. I wanted to love this and I didn't. So it was given to me because someone in my personal life loved this book. That person doesn't really read books that are in the fantasy genre very often. So when I picked this up, I knew that I probably wasn't going to love it. And I ended up actually putting it down. So if you want to see more, I guess, about the synopsis, I'll link some videos below where I talk about it in my What I'm Currently Reading videos. It followed Peyton, and she's one of the ordinaries. So in this world, there are elites. Elites have abilities because of this plague that rolled out through, you know, the different towns, the society, whatever. Payton doesn't have an ability, but she's hiding the fact that she has no ability because I think that's illegal. Anyway, there's a tournament that happens in this world and people who are elites get to sign up for the tournament. It's supposed to be like a privilege, but it's more of like an almost Hunger Games situation. And while I like all of the elements that this was presenting, I just hated the execution of the way it was shown to me, and I don't like the characters because their banter was just so cringy and underwhelming that I was like, can you just get on with it? I was like, I don't like this. I don't like it at all. So I ended up putting it down pretty quickly. I tried reading this physically and I just could not do it. And then I ended up borrowing the audiobook from my sister who recommended this to me. I still couldn't do it. Like, I really tried. I think I put it down when I had about 3 or 3.5 hours left of the audio. Like, I gave it as much of a go as I possibly could, and it just was not for me. I guess that's the one in this book haul that is the outlier that I didn't like, but to be fair, I didn't buy it for myself. Someone else bought it for me. So my tastes, for me, are on track, I guess. Now I've only got 2 left. One of them is Lore Olympus. I think this is volume 6. Yes. And this one was my attempt at loving the series and continuing it, because when I read volume 5, I thought, this is not going in a great direction. Like, it feels like Persephone's character, because this is the Hades and Persephone's retelling of their romance. It felt like Persephone's character was being a little bit undermined and sidelined, but it wasn't the case in this book. This kind of brought it back in this volume, and I'm grateful for that because I really like the vulnerability and the intimacy that Hades and Persephone could get from each other in this volume, and I feel like this concluded in a way that was satisfying without being cliffhangery, I guess. It felt right rather than the other book feeling meh. So I'm happy that I finished reading this, but there are so many volumes in this series and they are so expensive. So I'm glad I went out on a whim and I purchased this, because now I feel like I'm in a good place to go, I'm happy to tie a bow around this series and put it down for now. You know what? Next book haul, I might actually have the other volume. I don't know, but I'm in a mood right now where I don't feel the need to continue reading it. This is enough for me. I'm good. I actually lied about having 2 books left. So I had that one and I've got the one in my lap right now, and I've also got an audiobook. So I'll talk about my audiobook last because that's a new release, and I ended up also buying Frieren, which is a manga volume, and this is about Frieren. She is an immortal elf and she's starting up the story just after her and her traveling party slayed the Demon King, and they're coming back to this town to report to the king, hey, the Demon King's dead and we can begin the Age of Peace. So after this point, these characters witness a meteor shower, which only occurs once every 50 years in this citadel, and then they all go their separate ways. And Frieren is a bit detached and she doesn't really recognize that time has a different impact on humans than it does to elves. Like, she's never really taken it into account. Time has always just been something she's had so much of. So she spends like a couple of years maybe specializing in just reading a book, you know, like, and studying that kind of thing. So she doesn't really recognize how far people can travel in terms of aging in that time. And she comes back to the city again in 50 years. Obviously, the people that she traveled with are now old, and so they all get to experience this meteor shower together. The next time that she's in this city again, she's attending one of her friends' funerals, and so she realizes that she should have made more of an effort to get to know this character. And from that point on, we end up following Frieren on almost like a quest again. So when I read this, it felt like a cozy fantasy almost, because it was a little bit, I don't want to say slower, because it wasn't slow necessarily, because slow doesn't make it seem like it's impactful or meaningful, and it was. So I would say, like, the manga volume didn't quite convey all I wanted it to. Probably gave this about a 3 stars, but honestly, I just finished watching the first season of the anime and I am obsessed. Like, I love it so much. And I think that's because you can understand more of the tone and the intent and the emotion when it's in color and timed and audioed in front of you, rather than when you're reading it when it's physically flat and grayscale. So I enjoyed the anime so much, and this is a representation of how much I loved the anime. I'm keeping this manga because I just loved it so much. So I love the different quest that Frieren is going on now, because she's encountered different characters and she's recognizing that growth is good and change is good, and she's reminiscing about her old party. And I just love how she's in touch with her memories and the present and getting to know the people around her now. It's just such a beautiful story, and it's also goofy like an anime, as you'd expect. So it's just great. It strikes a great balance and I'm having so much fun with it. I'm so upset that the first season is done because I just want to keep watching it and watching it and watching it. So that is a good sign. That is a good sign. And then the final book on my book haul is Make the Season Bright by Ashley Herring Blake, and this is a Christmas book, even though it came out in October on Halloween. So that makes sense. Anyway, it is about two women, and I believe they were previously in a relationship, and one of them might have got left at the altar. And I don't know if I'm going to like a setup like that, because initially it makes me cringe and go, I don't know if I'm going to actually enjoy this. Like, what is the miscommunication that has occurred? Are these characters healed from what has happened in the past? And how is Ashley Herring-Blake going to convey that? There's a lot riding on Ashley Herring-Blake's storytelling here. So I hope that she pulls it off, because I would really like to enjoy a Christmas female-female romance. But those are all of the books that I have recently hauled. I'm surprised that I've only not read one of them, which is a pretty good innings, to be honest. I'm borrowing again, like I said, so much from my library. But that is all for my video. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll talk to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.